Have you noticed that it's easier these days to have a viral hit single than a successful album? Newer artists seem to thrive on creating trendy singles that dominate platforms like TikTok, but when it's time to drop a full body of work, they quickly find out the audience just isn't as invested. It's increasingly becoming an alarming trend in the music industry, especially in hip-hop. Artists who once seemed destined to be the next big thing end up stumbling so badly on the charts that you can't help but wonder what the hell went wrong. To make matters worse, the extreme lengths rappers go to just to prove they're not fading or falling off are almost unbelievable. These desperate attempts to silence critics often backfire spectacularly, leaving their careers in worse shape than before, but it doesn't seem to deter these young artists from trying. Today, we're diving into some of hip-hop's biggest flops in recent years. Buckle up because you might be surprised by the stories we're about to uncover. First up on our list is the $1 Million Baby crooner Tommy Richmond. There's no denying that $1 Million Baby came out of nowhere and became a TikTok sensation overnight, but here's what many people don't know. Tommy Richmond isn't exactly a newbie in the music scene. He's been on the music grind for years, experimenting with different genres, none of which gained traction until he struck gold with the Dirty South-inspired vibe behind $1 Million Baby. The song was a massive hit, going platinum in several countries, and it seemed like Tommy had finally earned the mainstream attention he'd been chasing all these years. He might have even scored the #1 spot on the Hot 100 if it weren't for the heavyweight battle between Drake and Kendrick. Now let's be real, that beef was way too iconic and mind-blowing to give up, even for Tommy Richmond. But the few missteps that would go on to mess up Tommy's momentum and derail his career didn't happen until later, and trust me, his decision-making will leave you speechless. The first major mistake he made was his decision to move forward with his album rollout despite knowing full well that the beef between Kendrick and Drake had the industry in a chokehold with very little, if anything, gaining traction at the time. But all of these factors didn't seem to matter to Richmond as he went ahead to release a follow-up single, Devil Is a Lie, which most assumed would be the second single off his upcoming debut album, Coyote. However, Devil Is a Lie didn't perform anywhere near as well as $1 Million Baby, but that didn't stop Richmond from hyping his debut album as a future classic. He painted a grand vision of Coyote being a timeless masterpiece, which a lot of fans seem to have bought into. Unfortunately for him though, Coyote turned out to be anything but a classic. It was a dead rubber. Every single aspect of the album was dissected and criticized even by his own fans. The disappointment was painfully clear when first week sales came in at just over 3,000 copies, a shockingly low number for someone who had just dominated the charts with a hit single. While a lot of his fans wondered how he could have gotten it so wrong, critics were quick to point out a tweet by Richmond himself where he declared he wasn't a hip-hop artist right on the cusp of releasing what felt like a hip-hop project. To be honest, that was a very amateur move. It was obvious he was trying to follow in the footsteps of other white rappers who've distanced themselves from hip-hop after finding success in the genre. But here's the thing, it rarely works. Hip-hop fans don't take kindly to artists who benefit from the culture and then turn their back on it. You can't take from the genre without giving back. I mean, who does that? It's crazy, but Richmond learned the lesson the hard way. Oh, we've got to mention that Tommy didn't even include his two biggest singles on the album. A baffling decision, and one he's probably regretting ever since. Now, Tommy's attempt at a comeback brings us to the next artist on our list, KYLA. If you're unfamiliar with her music, KYLA broke into the mainstream in 2019 and has since experimented with countless hip-hop sounds in search of a distinct identity that would resonate with her audience. Her single, No More Parties, seemed like the breakthrough she needed after it went viral on TikTok. Featuring Lil Durk on the remix was also a smart move as it brought even more attention to her craft. It felt like she had finally found the perfect wave to ride, but that wave never quite carried her to shore. Koi struggled to shake off the TikTok artist label that clung to her no matter how many interviews she did to disassociate herself from the narrative. Ironically, the same platform that blew up her song became her worst nightmare after her dismal performance in the XXL Freshman Freestyle turned into an unforgettable meme. To be fair, KYLA really did tank that performance, but she probably never imagined the internet would be so ruthless about it. Combine the meme fiasco with the fact that she's Benzino's daughter, the same Benzino that Eminem obliterated in their infamous beef, and Koi's chances of steering her career back on track started looking like an uphill battle she just couldn't win. Despite the criticisms and distractions, Koi wouldn't give up on her career that easily. She released her album Trendsetter in 2022. Leading up to the release of the album, it was quite obvious that Koi had put in a lot of work into this project. She even secured features from heavyweights like Nicki Minaj, Polo G, and Fivio Foreign. All signs pointed to this album being a game changer, maybe even the catalyst to take her career to the next level. You wouldn't believe that despite the heavy hitters featured on the album, it only sold 11,000 units in its first week of release, and it peaked at 89 on the Billboard chart. Most of the songs flopped and none gained significant traction. The hype Koi had built fizzled out almost overnight. Social media had a field day with her, teasing her relentlessly, and her attempts to fight back only made things worse. Determined to reinvent herself, Koi switched up her style, sampling as many old hits as she could in her search for a different vibe. For a moment, it seemed like she might have struck gold again. She even teamed up with EDM king David Guetta, releasing what looked like a surefire hit, but it all turned out to be another false dawn. The project tanked even harder than her previous one, failing to make an appearance on the Billboard Top 100. The album faded from public attention as quickly as it dropped. KYLA still has a chance to make the impact she's been striving for, but time isn't exactly on her side if we're being honest, coupled with the fact that the industry can be a very cruel place. Now, if you think back to the 2010s, you'll remember the wave of SoundCloud rappers breaking into the mainstream. But just as quickly as they rose, many of them faded away. Smokepurpp was one of the most surprising names to fall off, especially since he was considered one of the biggest stars of that SoundCloud rap era that dominated the industry briefly. As a producer turned rapper, his immense talent made many believe he was destined for a big break. There were even reports that Travis Scott's team was scouting him at one point, exploring the possibility of signing him. However, that never materialized. Even without Travis's full co-sign, Smokepurpp made serious noise in the mainstream. His singles Audi and Nephew became massive hits, earning platinum and gold certifications respectively. For a moment, it seemed like Smokepurpp was the real deal. His debut mixtape, Dead Star, further cemented his buzz, but everything unraveled with the release of his debut album, Dead Star 2. This album, intended as a sequel to his well-received mixtape, was an unmitigated disaster. Despite a reported $2 million budget, it failed to even crack the top 100 on the charts, a shocking outcome for a project with such significant investment. How could a $2 million project not crack the Billboard Top 100? It's almost impossible to believe, but those were Smokepurpp's exact words. So we got to take it as it is. But the crazy thing was, Smokepurpp didn't seem to learn from the failure. A few months later, he dropped another project, Florida Jit, which only further exposed him as a flop. Critics were stunned when his 4 million social media followers translated into just 4,000 first-week sales. To make matters worse, the album featured big names like Jack Harlow, Denzel Curry, and Rick Ross, yet sold less than 5,000 units. What baffled people the most was Smokepurpp's lack of promotion for the album, an amateur move for someone supposedly hungry to make an impact in hip-hop. How could you release a project and not hawk it everywhere? The consequences were devastating, which really wasn't surprising, and recovering from this mess was an absolutely impossible task for him. Smokepurpp fell off hard. Real hard. The next artist on the list is someone you've definitely heard of, the poster boy of the SoundCloud rap trend, Lil Pump. If you caught the Gucci Gang wave, then you know exactly who we're talking about. Lil Pump had a string of singles making massive waves in the mainstream when he first broke out. From Gucci Gang to his Kanye West collab I Love It, it felt like he had the world at his feet. His drip-heavy, drug-infused sound was unique, and fans loved the fresh energy he brought to the scene. His self-titled debut album sold 45,000 units in its first week, showing just how much people rocked with his music at the time. Pump's follow-up album, Harvard Dropout, took things even further, selling over 48,000 units in its first week. Everything suggested that Lil Pump could really carve out a space for himself in the genre, but things unraveled for him rather quickly. All signs pointed to Lil Pump carving out a lasting space in hip-hop, but it didn't take long for things to unravel for this rapper. His lean, heavy sound, while initially exciting, started to lose its appeal. Fans grew tired of his repetitive style, and his decision to rebrand as a Trump supporter during the 2020 election was the final nail in the coffin. By the time he dropped his next project, No Name, the world had moved on from his music, and he became irrelevant just like that. Pump has since tried to make a comeback, but things didn't turn out as he imagined, with his new songs getting criticized heavily on social media, signaling the end of the brief Lil Pump era. The final artist on our current list of rappers who fell off is none other than Toosii. Among all the names we've dissected so far, Toosii arguably had the most longevity in the mainstream. A multi-talented artist, Toosii's rap skills were top-notch, and he could sing just as well. Tuzi has been in the game full-time since 2017, making waves with his unique sound, albeit slowly. He didn't blow up overnight like most artists. His path to superstardom was slower, but he did become a star. His debut album, Poetic Pain, sold over 30,000 units in its first week, a respectable number. His second project, Now Jour, released in 2023, went gold and peaked at number 19 on the Billboard charts, solidifying his status as a rising star. But despite doing better than most, Tuzi wasn't satisfied. He frequently expressed his frustration on Instagram Live, claiming that the profit margins in hip-hop were too low and that the hard work artists put in wasn't reflected in their paychecks. Now, while he might have had a point, venting on social media wasn't going to change the music industry's reality. His real focus should have been on leveling up his own career. In what appeared to be a desperate attempt to garner attention, he went on Instagram Live just before releasing his third project, declaring, "If this album doesn't sell at least 20,000 units in its first week, I'm quitting rap." It was a risky gamble that could have gone either way, but unfortunately for Tuzi, the threat didn't have the impact he hoped for. His album sold just 17,000 units in its first week, falling short of his own benchmark. You should know the internet never forgets, and it wasted no time trolling him relentlessly, with fans and critics mocking his naive ultimatum. Rather than reigniting his career, this move only made Tuzi the subject of widespread ridicule, cementing his spot on the list of rappers who fell off. What's wild though is that Tuzi's album actually debuted at number 50 on the Billboard chart. Not bad for an artist who hasn't quite reached A-list status, but the fact that he made that Instagram Live declaration unprovoked when no one had called him out or challenged him made the trolling even more brutal, and to some extent, you'll agree that he kinda deserved it. Even though Tuzi later tried to walk back his comments and clean up the mess he'd created, it was too late. He had played himself, damaging his reputation in the process. In the grand scheme of things, no one would have cared if the album sold 17,000 units or even 10. The real problem was his decision to put a spotlight on the numbers, creating unnecessary pressure and scrutiny. Tuzi is still out there grinding, working to resurrect his career and finally take it to the next level, but for now, that breakthrough moment remains elusive. So what do you think? Are you convinced, like we are, that these hip-hop artists fell off, or do you still listen to their music? Let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your take. And don't forget, the list of rappers who've fallen off is way longer than this, so like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.